Have you ever felt your heart pound so hard it echoes in your skull? Palms slick with sweat, every muscle locked tight as your brain screams danger. Fear is the ultimate puppet master, yanking our strings before we can think, transforming calm humans into trembling bundles of adrenaline in milliseconds. What if I told you that the terror gripping you during a horror movie, or the dread crawling up your spine in a dark alley, it's an ancient survival program running on biological hardware, millions of years old, coded into every cell, every synapse, every breath you take? Hit that like if you're ready to unravel why your own body betrays you with fear, why your hands shake, why breath catches. Fear isn't weakness. It's the reason your ancestors didn't become saber-toothed tiger snacks 10,000 years ago, when predators ruled the night and survival mattered. Every time you flinch at a shadow or freeze, when a car swerves too close, you're experiencing a phenomenon so deeply wired into existence. Babies mere months old already show fear responses, proving this isn't learned behavior, but something far more fundamental to what makes us human. Scientists recently discovered that fear responses activate in the brain faster than conscious thought, meaning your body reacts before you even register what's happening. That split-second advantage between sensing danger and becoming lunge-shaped, the evolution of our entire species, determining who survived to pass on their genes. The thing is, modern humans face far fewer genuine threats than our prehistoric relatives, yet we're drowning in anxiety disorders, phobias, and panic. Why does a mechanism designed to save us now torment millions with fears of public speaking, flying, or even leaving the house to grab? Let's dive into the biological machinery first, because understanding fear means getting intimate with your brain's oldest, most primal architecture that's been running forever. Deep inside your skull sits the amygdala, a tiny almond-shaped cluster of neurons that acts as your personal threat detector, constantly scanning every sight. When the amygdala detects something remotely threatening, it doesn't wait for permission or second opinions. It hijacks your entire nervous system in flight. Within 20 milliseconds, faster than you can blink, electrical signals cascade through your brainstem, triggering a hormonal tsunami that changes everything about you. Your adrenal glands dump adrenaline and cortisol into your bloodstream. Your heart rate doubles or triples. Blood rushes away from digestion toward muscles. Your pupils dilate to let in more light. Your liver floods your system with glucose for instant energy. And suddenly you're a transformed being. This is your body transforming into a survival machine, optimized for exactly two options: fight the threat or run like hell to live another. But here's where it gets wild. Your amygdala can't tell the difference between a charging bear and a text message from your boss. Studies from the past few years show that the same neural pathways light up whether you're facing genuine mortal danger or imagining worst-case scenarios. Your ancient brain reads both situations as survival threats, triggering identical physiological responses even though one could kill you and the other just bruises. This mismatch between Stone Age hardware and modern stressors explains why people experience panic attacks in grocery stores, or why certain sounds, smells, images catapult. The amygdala doesn't care about context, it only knows patterns, and once it learns that a particular stimulus preceded danger, it files that forever, ready to sound the alarm at the slightest hint of repetition, which is why phobias can feel so irrational, yet so overwhelmingly real. Fear operates on multiple levels simultaneously, which makes it both incredibly powerful and maddeningly complex to understand or overcome through willpower alone here. There's the immediate, unconscious fear response we just described. But there's also learned fear, which develops through experience and observation throughout your lifetime. Children aren't born afraid of snakes, spiders, or heights with the same intensity they eventually develop. They learn these fears by watching adults. Recent research into fear conditioning shows that our brains are pre-programmed to learn certain fears faster than others, a phenomenon called biological preparedness here. You can train someone to fear a snake image in just 1 or 2 pairings with a mild electric shock, creating lasting phobias instantly. But training someone to fear a flower or a bunny requires significantly more repetitions, sometimes hundreds, because evolution didn't wire us for harmless. Evolution sculpted our minds to prioritize learning about dangers that consistently threatened our ancestors, which is why so many common phobias revolve around animals, rather than genuinely modern threats like car accidents or unhealthy diets that actually kill far more people today. Our fears remain stuck in past, The fear network in your brain extends way beyond just the amygdala, involving the hippocampus for memory context and the prefrontal cortex for assessment. When these regions communicate smoothly, you can override irrational fears, recognizing that the spider in your bathroom won't actually kill you, despite every instinct. But when trauma or chronic stress damages these connections, the amygdala runs wild, triggering fear responses to increasingly harmless stimuli until life becomes minefield. Drop in the comments. What's your most irrational fear? The one that makes zero logical sense but still makes your heart race wildly. Understanding the chemistry of fear reveals even more about why it feels so physically overwhelming, why it's not just in your head only. Adrenaline is the star player, surging through your veins within seconds of perceiving danger, sharpening your senses and supercharging your muscles for action. Cortisol follows close behind, sustaining the stress response over longer periods, keeping you alert and ready, but also wearing down your body forever. Chronic fear and anxiety mean these hormones circulate constantly, leading to exhaustion, weakened immunity, digestive problems, and even changes in brain structure over time. Recent studies show that people with anxiety disorders often have overactive amygdalas and underactive prefrontal cortexes, creating a vicious cycle where fear breeds more. But here's the hope. Neuroplasticity means your brain can rewire itself, forming new connections that help you manage fear more effectively through therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy works by gradually exposing people to feared situations in safe environments, teaching the amygdala that the feared stimulus doesn't predict. Over time, those fear associations weaken, and the prefrontal cortex gains more control, letting you respond thoughtfully instead of reactively to triggers that paralyzed. Virtual reality is revolutionizing fear treatment, letting therapists create controlled environments where people can face heights, crowds, or spiders without real-world risks here. The technology tracks physiological responses in real time, adjusting scenarios to keep exposure challenging but not overwhelming, maximizing the therapeutic benefit of sessions. Early results show success rates climbing higher than traditional exposure therapy, with people conquering lifelong phobias in weeks instead of years of progress. Fear also has a fascinating social dimension that most people never consider. We're wired to pick up fear signals from others, almost telepathically. When someone in a group suddenly tenses up, or their eyes widen in alarm, everyone nearby instantly becomes more vigilant, scanning for unseen. This emotional contagion helped our ancestors survive by spreading danger alerts faster than verbal communication ever could, keeping entire tribes safe from predators. But in modern settings, it also means fear spreads through crowds like wildfire, turning minor incidents into stampedes or riots when panic becomes reinforcing. Social media amplifies this ancient mechanism to terrifying extremes, letting fear cascade across millions of people in minutes through viral videos and alarming headlines. Studies show that fear-based content gets shared exponentially more than positive news, exploiting our biological bias toward threat detection for clicks, engagement, advertising. This creates an ecosystem where we're constantly bombarded with reasons to be afraid, from exaggerated dangers to outright fabrications designed purely to provoke reactions. Our brains never evolved to handle this level of stimulation, leading to epidemic levels of anxiety as we're terrified of threats that are negligible. Yet here's something beautiful about fear. It's also the foundation of courage, excitement, and growth, pushing us beyond comfortable limits into extraordinary experiences. That roller coaster thrill, that pre-performance adrenaline rush, that nervous excitement before asking someone out. All variations of fear channeled into positive experiences through thrill seekers and adrenaline junkies have learned to reinterpret fear signals as excitement, literally using the same physiological response for enjoyment instead of avoidance. Research shows that exposing yourself to controlled fear through horror movies, extreme sports, or public speaking builds psychological resilience that carries into life. You're essentially training your nervous system to stay functional under stress, teaching your prefrontal cortex to maintain control even when your amygdala screams. This is why facing your fears, as cliché as it sounds, genuinely works. Each successful exposure rewires your brain just a little bit. The future of fear research is heading into mind-blowing territory, with scientists using brain imaging to watch fear form in real time at neuron. They're identifying specific cells that encode particular fears, and in animal studies, They've actually erased fear memories by deactivating those exact neurons with light. Imagine a world where trauma survivors could have their most debilitating fear memories switched off like flipping a light switch, freeing them from suffering. Of course, ethical questions swirl around this technology. Memories make us who we are, and even painful ones contribute to our identity and wisdom. But for someone trapped in paralyzing phobias or crippling post-traumatic stress, the promise of targeted fear reduction could mean the difference between existing and living. Pharmaceutical companies are developing drugs that enhance the extinction of learned fears, essentially turbocharging therapy by making the brain more plastic during exposure sessions. Combined with VR therapy and neurofeedback training, these approaches could revolutionize mental health treatment within the next decade, making anxiety disorders far more treatable. Meanwhile, artificial intelligence is learning to predict and model fear responses, potentially identifying people at risk for anxiety disorders before symptoms even appear. Imagine an app that monitors your physiological responses, speech patterns, and behavioral changes, gently alerting you when stress is building toward problematic levels. Early intervention could prevent millions from developing chronic anxiety, catching the problem while it's still easy to address with simple lifestyle adjustments and strategies. Skeptics worry about privacy and the potential for such technology to be misused, monitoring emotions without consent or manipulating fear for control. But proponents argue that the mental health crisis demands bold solutions, and if we can treat fear more effectively, we have a moral obligation. Tag a friend who needs to hear this, because understanding fear might be the first step toward mastering it instead of being mastered. Fear will always be part of the human experience, hardwired too deeply to ever fully eliminate, and honestly, we wouldn't want to erase completely. A life without fear would be a life without caution, ending quickly in reckless decisions and preventable disasters that common sense would have avoided. The goal isn't to become fearless, it's to become fear-wise, recognizing when your alarm system is protecting you versus when it's malfunctioning and holding. Learning to sit with discomfort, to acknowledge fear without letting it dictate your choices. That's where real freedom lives and thrives in everyday moments. Think about what your life could look like if fear were a tool you wielded instead of a cage that confined you to smaller. The opportunities you'd seize, the relationships you'd pursue, the adventures you'd embrace instead of watching from the sidelines while others live fully. And fear is information. It's your brain's best guess about danger based on incomplete data and ancient programming that served different purposes long ago. Sometimes it's right and you should listen. Other times it's wildly wrong and you need to override it. And wisdom is learning that this changed how I see the world, because realizing fear is just electrical signals and chemicals transformed my relationship with anxiety from enemy. When panic rises now, I can observe it almost scientifically, noting the racing heart and tight chest without identifying as those sensations or believing. That separation between experiencing fear and being consumed by it is the difference between suffering and simply feeling uncomfortable sensations that will pass. With you have more control than you think. Your brain is not your master, but a tool that responds to training, practice, and patience. Start small. Face one tiny fear this week. Maybe speak up in a meeting or strike up a conversation with a stranger. Notice how the anticipation is often worse than the reality, how your catastrophic predictions rarely come true, and how each small victory makes the path out of fear's prison is paved with uncomfortable moments you survive, each one proving to your amygdala that you're stronger than smash. Subscribe for more dives into the impossible. Comment your wildest theory about why we dream in nightmares below, and share this with because fear is calling, whispering secrets about human nature. And who knows what answers you'll uncover next when you stop running and turn. The abyss stares back, but maybe that's exactly where the most profound truths about being alive hide, waiting for someone brave enough to take bait. Today, the day you started understanding the puppet master, taking back the strings one courageous choice at a time until fear serves you.